Of the LFC Total Red Football Podcast. My name's Kings, and joining me tonight is Kev, Ritchie, and Neil. Welcome along, lads. Kev, I'll start with you first. You okay?
All good, mate. Got the snooker on in the background, so it's a perfect Easter Monday for me at the minute. So, how are you, mate? Do you have a good Easter?
Yeah, it was really good, to be fair. It's been a bit of a mad one, but yeah, it's starting to calm down nicely now. Just got to eat some more chocolate and we'll be all right. Ritchie, what about yourself? You okay? Welcome along to the new podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's it's a really exciting time to be part of this. So thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Back to school though for me tomorrow. I've had 2 weeks off, so there's a little bit of post-holiday blues going on, but shouldn't moan too much. We get a bonus Monday off for today, I suppose.
And finally, Neil, welcome along to the Total Red Podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thank you very much for having me on. I've had a bit of a lazy day, if I'm honest. My son is following Stevenage Borough FC, so at 3 o'clock I watched them play Bristol Rovers. So that was
in League One, yeah.
It is League One, yeah. So it's not too far from where we are, so it's kind of his local team. So I watched them this afternoon, and then been lazing around really. Back to work tomorrow.
Right, okay. Well, obviously, very quickly, but Kev already knows this. My wife works for Wrexham Football Club, so I know all about League One football. So I was watching it today, and it's a bit of a tussle at the top end there going on. It's very tight.
It is. I took it because did they play Wycombe, or they went above Wycombe today, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, they won above Wycombe. Wycombe lost 4-0, and Wrexham won 2-1.
Yeah, so I took him to Wycombe the other week. I wasn't that impressed with Wycombe, to be honest.
No.
So I think Wrexham will do it.
Well, 2 games.
I'm glad we got a bit of a League One link then, because I'm from Peterborough. My local team is Peterborough, and I go and see them quite often. So
they did well in the cup final.
They did.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, completely unexpected that was. Again, I was in Paris, so unfortunately I missed being at Wembley. But it's nice we've got a League One connection going on.
Happy days. Well, we'll move on from League One and we'll go back to while we're all here. It's to cover LFC, obviously. And the first thing I was going to talk about was the game yesterday against Leicester City. 1-0 win, obviously, moves us closer to the fantastic prize of the Premier League title. Just looking overall, start with you, Ritchie. What was your view of the game, especially like starting with the first half? Did you enjoy it, or what did you think of it?
I enjoy every game. So it's not it's not necessarily, especially this season, there's not too much to grumble about, and it's quite funny because that we are finding lots of things to grumble about because our performances aren't where they were perhaps at the start of the season. I think our last proper performance was probably that City one, and it just feels as if we as great champions always do, find a way to win, and that's I think what happened. I'm sure we'll talk about Trent a little bit later. And again, completely unexpected. I certainly didn't see him to get on, on the pitch, on the score sheet, and get the winner as well. So it was an okay performance. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It was okay. There are a few things that could be improved upon. But again, we got the job done. Leicester were battling for their lives. Unfortunately, now they're relegated, and it was always going to be a tough game. It was never. I don't think it was ever going to be a 5-6, 7-0 walloping from the champions elect. If I'm honest, I think it was always going to be a gritty game, especially being at the King Power Stadium as well. We got the win. That's all that matters, and we go within 3 points. Hopefully, we don't win it midweek. Again, I'm sure we'll discuss this later, but I'd love to win it at Anfield on against Spurs at home in front of that home crowd.
Neil, what was your thoughts on the game? Were you happy overall?
I think in hindsight, yes. I can't say that I sat there and was mesmerised by the game. I've grown a little bit frustrated in recent weeks, and I can only put it down to the fact that we're so far in front that it's not easy to play in these circumstances. But I think looking back at the game today, I think we set a record for the most big chances missed before we actually scored. So I think the game could have been very different. I mean, Mo hit the post, didn't he, after 3 minutes? I think it was a bit unlucky not to score. And I think it was all, we'd have got an early goal, I think it would have been very, very different. And we kept them to They hit the post, didn't they? But other than that, they didn't have a great deal. Offside goal, sorry, not offside goal, disallowed goal, but I think it was a foul. So yeah, I think I think we're in a strange situation, one that we probably never expected to be in, and we're still finding ourselves moaning and looking for areas of improvement. So yeah, overall happy. It's not the exciting team that we maybe were before the international break, but we're getting the job done, and that's all that matters.
Kev, I'll come to you. Do you agree with the other two? Happy with the overall result, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's been summed up by both Ritchie and Neil quite eloquently. I'm only going to repeat and probably copy and paste what they've said to a certain degree, but it's just to be honest, I went in expecting 5-6-0 drubbing, and thought the way Salah started the game, I thought that was going to be the case. And then as long as the game went on, I dwindled that down to 5 to 4 to 3, and then when Trent came on, I just went, I just want to go. I don't care who it is. So it got to the point where as long as we won, that's all I was cared about. I agree. We have kind of stumbled, but that stumbling was still, I think, second in the current form stakes as well as to. So although we seem to be stumbling, we find a way to win, and that's what champions do, and that's what we're seeing the champions elect do at the minute. So for me, a perfect result over the weekend. We win and we send a team that I don't quite like, especially the fans. So we actually sent them down as well. So it was a win-win. It was probably the best Easter Sunday I've had for a while.
Well, to be honest, I'm going to touch slightly on Leicester because they've had such an up and down few years. I mean, winning the Premier League was very unexpected. Then they won the FA Cup a few years later, and then they get relegated. They get promoted quite easily, really, last year, and then already they're straight back down. It's like, even though they were established as a Premier League side, it shows how difficult it is now to maybe come up from the Championship straight up to the Premier League. Even those like Southampton as well, they've come up, been there before previous and stayed there, and yet straight back down this time. Maybe Ipswich is slightly different because they came League One Championship straight through. So it was always going to be hard for them to maybe maintain that. But the other two, they've been Premier League clubs. And there's such a gulf now, isn't there, for the teams coming up? I'll come to you first, Richie. That they're struggling so much. I never envisaged maybe the three that came up going straight back down, but it's a real hard league to come in and establish yourself now, isn't it? Oh, you're on mute. Don't know. Sorry, can't hear you.
Do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, that's fine. No, it's gone again. Neil, if you want to take over and just obviously pick up that.
Yeah, so it does seem the last couple of years that it is a difficult league to come into. I think a lot of Leicester's problem is they've invested quite poorly over recent years.
Yeah.
And someone said yesterday, out of their squad, who would you realistically look at? And they've got a couple of lively wingers, but not much else. So I think their problem, as you say, they've had massive highs and massive lows over recent years. I think their recent problems are to do with the way they've invested in the squad. With the others, I'm a little bit critical because I feel some of these managers will not sacrifice their philosophies and their beliefs when they haven't got the squad to be able to play the football that they want. And I think that often, how many times do you see the teams like Ipswich, teams like Southampton try and play out from the back, they get caught and the opposition score. And I think, it is a difficult league to come into. It seems to be getting more and more difficult. But I think sometimes these teams don't help themselves. It was Burnley last year. This year it was Southampton under Russell Martin and under McKenna at Ipswich. So, yeah, I think it's difficult. I'm not underestimating the difficulty at all, but I don't think they help themselves sometimes.
Yeah. Ritchie, I'll come back to you. Is the mic working okay?
Well, I don't know. Is it? You tell me.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
there you go. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, like, well, what I was saying is, those parachute payments clubs become so reliant upon. We've seen it with Norwich City. They become so reliant on it that up down sort of works for them as a club because they get so much money for doing that. And obviously it helps their coffers quite a bit. What I will say about the bottom three is that they've robbed us one of the best relegation battles of all time, with Everton, Manchester United, Spurs, West Ham and Wolves, because there's only 2 points between all of them. So had the bottom three not been so diabolical, we could have been having a conversation where Everton and Manchester United and Spurs all are in a relegation battle as well. So I know, sensational, and Spurs are 2-0 down as well at the minute, so it doesn't look like they're going to get out of that. So what I will say about, I think Neil absolutely spot on. When you come to the Premier League, you can't play in the way in which you did in the Championship because the level, the stamina is completely different. I think that attacking football or 10 men behind a ball, neither of which work. You do have to have that Blackpool approach when they first came up, almost, and be ready to do a little bit of both. I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest, with Leicester because, like you say, they were promoted at a canter, really. I did expect better things from them, but it is what it is. I think there's been not that many players. When teams go down, but we could take him, we could take an Andy Robertson from Hull.
Yeah.
There's probably only really your Delap from Ipswich, who I think could, still rocket in the Premier League. Jamie Vardy put out a tweet and apologized to the fans and actually used an expletive, something show, is what he said about this season. So the players are obviously feeling it as well. So it's such a hard league to come into. It's an even harder one to sustain and maintain in there.
Oh, your mic's gone off again. Sorry, Rich. I'll move on to you, Kev. Why, at the beginning of this, you obviously mentioned that you have a dislike for Leicester. What is your issue with them?
My issue is with the middle of the country and have this Tory attitude that and the Hillsborough chanting Jordan games when we play against them. So there's a lot that goes to me towards that. Now, taking that aside, those three teams that come up, it was quite, what Neil said and what Ritchie was getting to as well, was quite right. You've got three teams that come up. You've got one in Ipswich, you've come back and back. So to come up twice and to get to the elite level, that kind of stumbles them over, and doesn't help them because they probably needed a season or two in the Championship to have a little bit of sustainability. Going up and up, it's kind of hard to keep that track and keep going. As for the other two, it comes down to exactly what Neil said. Everyone looks at Pep, and we all think that that's the way to play football in the Premier League. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. You need teams, unfortunately, have to play like the Atletico Madrid style of football, the shadows, bring the dark arts back into the game, going 4-4-2. What's wrong with going back to things that kind of help? There's no flexibility or adaptability with the coaches. They seem to be set on playing one style of football, and that's how I'm going to go down. And then the frustrating thing for the fans is that in a league where they're constantly getting beat, they'll go down to a league where they'll constantly be winning again. So it's like a bipolar with kind of way with supporters, because they're not good enough to be in the Premier League, and that comes down to scouting and to actually having a plan. And I don't think many of them do have a plan. Norwich had a plan of just sustaining and gaining the money and going down and building in the Championship, when actually you should be building in the Premiership, and you should be bringing in Premiership players who were are not near the end of the block, but have been in the league that long, that know how to play in the league. So there's a lot of things these clubs can and can do, but they won't do. And it comes down to how you focus on it. Your first thing is getting 17th, I think. And then if you can gain that 17th, you then go up in little stages. But you get to the point where you get like a Brentford, and then Leicester get into the Champions League because they've won the league. and they feel as though they've got to be there now every season, and that's hard to sustain and do. And then they gamble a lot on players and things happening. It doesn't work, and they end up falling down the table again. It's hard to get into that top six and stay there. You know, so the likes of Newcastle, if you've seen them, they didn't do well last season, and now pushing back into the Champions League. So there are opportunities, but you've got to be able to sustain it. And these clubs don't. I don't think they see that as a way. They feel as though we're already behind the 8 ball and we're going to be finishing in the bottom 3. But with that kind of attitude and with the fans as well, you know, you've got to have an actual structure as to how you're going to attempt it. It's not easy, and if it was easy, everyone would be able to do it. But unfortunately, you've got to be behind the tested players that may be coming to the end of the time with certain clubs, and bringing them in instead of bringing in championship team players in as well. So there's many factors to it, but that's the main reason, and the reason why I don't like Leicester fans either. So
well, I'm going to actually carry on, Sion. I wasn't planning to do this, but I was just looking while you were talking then, and I'm not going to bring up a spreadsheet or anything on the screen, but I've just looked at last season. I think it was Sheffield United, Luton, and Burnley, I think it was, wasn't it? And looking at the kind of money that they earned for, like Luton earned 115 million, I think it was, for being in the Premier League. And I was talking to my father-in-law yesterday about this. They're dropping down now from the Championship back to League One. And at the moment, their solidarity payments are going to be the equivalent of approximately 50 million over 3 seasons. So you're probably talking, 25 million, 15 million, and 10 million, or whatever. And I think my argument was, and this might be, people might argue this point with me, I don't think they should get them. Only for the reason that as you drop out, it should be that you put a clause in the contract that says if you drop out, the players' wages get halved. They shouldn't have these players sitting there on X thousands a week, and then they've dropped out because of their maybe mismanagement or just didn't buy, like Kev says, didn't maybe plan it. And I think, but how fair is it? They're dropping into League One. They could have 20, 30 million pounds to spend. So they're going to basically then go back up, and it creates exactly like we have now, just a yo-yo effect of all the so-called, the Norwich, the Burnley coming back up this time. Leeds look like they're going to get promoted possibly tonight. And it just becomes a yo-yo, and then the also runs. That's what it's like, same as the Premier League has the top, all the money at the top, and then again the rest just have to scrabble around for what's left. And I think there's so much money around that teams could plan this better. Is that something? Do you agree or disagree with that, Richie?
I think Leeds. Can you hear me? By the way, is it working?
Yeah.
I think my headphones, and they don't talk to each other anyway. But I think Leeds were promoted today, along with Burnley. It's so hard. Like the only issue with all these player contracts, you would expect them, if they go down, then yes, their wages do get halved. But then, if you're a player who's on the fringes of, let's say, a West Ham, but you're guaranteed first team football at Leicester, you go for the same money, but are you going to sign a contract? Say, oh, by the way, if you get relegated, your wages are slashed in half. So there's that. The players have to look after themselves as well. I don't know enough, if I'm honest, about parachute payments to say whether they're a good thing or not. But as I said, so many teams rely on them, and it does feel like that's the way they run their football club financially, is by up, down. And they're not, and therefore I wouldn't say they're not bothering going down, because obviously the money is in staying up, but they're happy to drop down because they know in a season or two they'll just go back up again. Leicester and Southampton and Ipswich, they'll be back in the Premier League, in 2 or 3 years. I have absolutely no doubt about Leicester and Southampton, especially. So, that they know that, okay, well, we'll go down this time, but we'll just try it again next time. And that's what it feels like. It feels like, okay, well, we'll get another bite of the cherry in a season or two, like Leeds have done over several times, like Burnley have done, like we obviously mentioned Norwich as well. So it does feel like you sort of give these teams a little bit of an apple. But then again, that being said, the prize money is so massive in the Premier League because of all of the commercial rights, because of all the TV rights, because of all of the deals, etc. That there was a real strong reason why the top 4 was called the top 4, and then it went to the top 6. And it's only really now where we're seeing different ownerships of that top 6. The traditional top 6 now are completely muddled when you've got Manchester United in 13th, lol, and Spurs down there as well.
Neil, I'll just talk to you finally on this. Do you have a view of like parachute payments and all the money that's going around, even for the bottom sides? Can they be doing better?
Yeah, I think they should. I think they should have a better business model than what they've got. And I hadn't really thought about it the way you kind of explained it. That potentially we might have Luton, because they're in the bottom 3 with 2 games to go, dropping into League One, but having a financial advantage over other teams. It's not just...
sorry for interrupting. It's basically like Blackpool, not Blackpool, sorry, Birmingham. They dropped into League One last season. They spent up to 15 million on Jay Stansfield from Fulham, blown everybody else out of the water. Now it's worked because that big investment has got them promoted back to the Championship. But in the long run, they had a big advantage before they even started in the league, didn't they?
Yep. No, absolutely.
That one player was worth all of the Peterborough United squad combined, and obviously they played each other at Wembley. So that is the competition that you're talking.
Yeah. But it just them going in, and then teams in League One that have got ambitions to get into the Championship are vying for 2 spots, 1 automatic spot and 1 playoff spot, which seems a little bit unfair, and that's why it seems to be that, I mean, Burnley coming back, great for Burnley as a club, great for their supporters, but I'd like it to be some different teams coming into the Premier League. So I think they should manage their the situations better than they probably do. We shouldn't have players coming into Championship and League One on huge contracts, and there should be drop-offs put into their contracts to say, look, if we're not a success this season, and success may well be 17th, as Kev said, then you're going to be hit in the pocket for this. So I think it could be. I think there's so much with the finances in the game that probably needs to be looked at. They've looked at PSR and trying to get hold of things that way. Probably needs to be tweaked, because I think it's going to start to hamstring more and more. But yeah, improvements can definitely be made from a parachute payment perspective as well.
I also think on that though, I do think that there's got to be a better bridge between the Premiership and the EFL, and there's got to be more of a financial gain for the EFL. Premier League being its own entity is one thing, but the fact is it's affecting and negating, the grassroots and the money dribbling down.
Yeah.
You only have to look at Berry and got promoted on Saturday from the 9th tier, and it's a shame that the likes of the Premier League couldn't step in at the time when the money was needed for them to be kept on. I do think that there needs to be a bit more fairer, a fairer share of the money. Now I understand the Premier League will say, well, commercially we've done everything ourselves, so why should we look after the rest of the 72 clubs? But this was a football association with 92 clubs, and that's the way I see this game. Even though it is called the Premier League, I do think that if you look at it, every club has got someone who's either being played or is loaned to a League One, a League Two, or a Championship club. So they are important and vital to the Premier League. So those links and those vessels, the blood being the money, should be like an artery down to the actual grassroots, because the better players we can bring and produce ourselves is not only good for the Premier League, but it's also good for the national team as well, because then you're utilising the money and gaining the grassroots, and you're building up a development of the EFL and the Premier League to an actual identity that gives you a way of bringing in the best elite players and the youngsters and showing that there is a guide to that, and not all to be focused on one weekend in a bank holiday Sunday at Wembley.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at the player, I mean, there's been some fantastic players that have come into the Premier League from the Championship. You've got Jared Bowen, Morgan Rogers, who looks a fantastic player and prospect. Adam Walton, you've got Crystal Palace. I always thought incentivizing Premier League clubs to invest in talent from Championship, League One, League Two would be the way to go about things. Whether that means you pay a word of the week tariff on overseas transfers to encourage people to flood some more money down into the lower leagues and grassroots, as you say, because there's some real talent out there that are already doing it in the Premier League, and I'm sure there's a lot more as well.
And we've absolutely benefited as well from the EFL. Look at Conor Bradley, who was on loan at Bolton. You know, not long ago in the 22-23, I think it was, season, and obviously then he's come under us. Players have to go out on loan to get that experience, and we absolutely, yes, it benefits Bolton, but we still exploit that. You know, we still rely on the EFL to develop our youngsters, to give them that first team experience. It's not, as Kev said, it's not a separate entity. The Premier League, you know, football didn't start in 1992 saying, right, now we've got the Premier League and this is the best of the best. You know, it absolutely has to be all of the leagues together. And it's not, you know, it absolutely isn't. I do think the EFL could help themselves a little bit more as well. And I do think that likewise, the Premier League should be helping the EFL and grassroots a lot more than what they are, because there's a reason why, I don't know, just off the top of my head, Mark Guehi is valued at £60 million. I can guarantee an extra 15 million of that is because he's English, you know, and as Neil said about this tariff, well, actually, if we had more English players to choose from who come from the grassroots football, who are as good as everybody else, then actually you don't have to whack a £15 million tax on the best English centre half just because he's English and we're trying to hit homegrown quotas. I think with the homegrown quotas, that it's funny, isn't it? And it's also slightly ironic because those homegrown quotas were used to and brought in to encourage English and homegrown players, but actually it's had the adverse effect because it's made those people now more expensive. So, you know, you can't bring those players in. I'm sure that Jared Bowen, you know, he's worth 70 million. If you take away the fact he's English, he's probably 50 million. He could get a move if he ever wanted it, you know, away from West Ham. But again, maybe clubs are put off with the what we call the English tax as well. And I think maybe that's something that we have to think about. We absolutely need a homegrown quota, but with that, you know, it does come at a price of, you know, paying a lot more for the English talent that's already there. And there's a reason, and it's not just Gareth Southgate, there's a reason why England haven't won a major championship in so long, is because the money isn't there to develop the youngsters and the grassroots. We get these superstars who we build up and build up and build up, you know, and we can't ever get over the line in the national team.
Yeah, this is it. Well, I know we went off on a bit of a tangent then but it was actually all valid points, to be fair, about the way the system works. But I will bring it back round to Kev's, I think, favourite player, Trent Alexander-Arnold. We talked about, we've talked many times, me and Kev, about him, obviously, and I know there's rumours about him maybe moving on or staying or whatever there is out there. But the facts of the matter is he scored the winning goal yesterday, Kev, and he got the 3 points. He celebrated in such a way that lots of fans on social media are now clinging to the thing, is it a final farewell, or is it he celebrated so much in front of the fans that he's staying, but he just hasn't announced it yet? I mean, what was your view on the celebration?
It was a goal that was needed at that time, and he celebrated exactly the way I expected anyone else would have celebrated.
Yeah.
It eased the pressure. I'm not reading any much into it, as I say. I made a funny quote yesterday on our WhatsApp group, which was, you know, you see Judas at Easter, and it's not that, you know, it is just fun. As I say, I've diluted a lot what I've said. And that's not because of yesterday. It's just I don't want to get into the lad. I think he's done us a great, you know, he's been great for us. The mad thing is that is his first goal with his left foot, and that for me is striking for me, because I was like, wait there, and when you start thinking about it, the lad, you know, it's great what he's done, and it had to be him. And every time he scores at Leicester, we win the league. So, you know, it was inevitable that we all should have put about all our mortgage on it that Trent was going to score, and it needed him to come off the bench. And when he did come off the bench, he changed the game for us, him and Elliott. And it's a shame that we haven't seen enough of Elliott this season. But, you know, I it's a shame that he hasn't had the minutes that he gets. But again, I was quite happy. I'm not reading much into it. You know, he celebrated as though he that's it. We're going to win the league, and that's how I see it. I'm not going to start delving into the ins and outs and the MC squared and the physics and the chemistry of why he did what he did and why did Costas have his hand out with 5 and why did Virgil have his hands out with 5. Is that a 5-year contract? People are looking into it far too much. It is what it is. It was a goal that was needed. The goalkeeper was playing, and he was like the best. It was like playing against Ray Clements or Alison Becker against PSG. He was making save after save, and it needed something that that happened. It was inevitable that no one else wanted to put the ball in the net. It fell to him. He's hit it with his foot and flew in the back of the net. That's all I want, and it gets us 3 points. Yeah, I kind of hesitated first, thinking how do we celebrate, but in the end, me head overruled my heart and just go, right, let's just get into this. We've got 3 points, let's move on, and that's it. But there's too many people asking and looking into it a bit too much. I think he was professional, and now he answered the questions at the end, and he's still under contract with us. Once the league's over, or after Sunday, I do expect him to come out at some point then, because that will be the point of which I'll then be asking him, as an advisor to him, if it was, let's confirm things once the league's been done. So I expect something, an announcement next week, and whatever it is, I've just got to deal with it. You know what I mean? I won't be happy if he leaves, but I'm not going to go into him, dig into him, because he's brought me so much joy, especially at Leicester.
Neil, do you agree with that kind of summary? Was it just a celebration? There was nothing to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a huge goal.
It was.
And it obviously meant a lot to him as well, because a lot has been spoken about him and his situation, and a lot of it not nice, and quite negative towards him and what might happen. So I don't think there was any real clues. I'm with Kev. I think it was just a massive goal. And he chose to celebrate it that way. I do wonder if he was going to stay, why it hasn't been done. So if I was to guess, I think he may go. But I hope not, because he is a hugely important player for us. And as Kev said, brought us some great memories down the years. And I think when he's not on the pitch and he's firing, we miss him tremendously. And I actually think in the PSG game at home, we were starting to dominate that game second half through him, and then he picked up his injury, and I think we dropped off after he went off the pitch. So can't underestimate his importance to us. But yeah, we'll be disappointed if he was to go. But nothing for me in that yesterday. People were making up, he's hung his shirt on the corner flag, and that signifies this. Well, it wasn't true, because I think McAllister hung it up on the corner flag. It's made a great picture. But yeah, I didn't read much into it. I think he was just happy because he'd come back from injury and scored a really important goal for the team.
Yeah, I was going to say, Richard, that's how I interpreted it. At the end of the day, the team were, I thought at some points, almost like a pre-season. And it felt like that a little bit like the West Ham game. When he come on, I didn't expect him to come on, to be honest. I didn't even think of him coming back on the field for that game. But then he comes on, scores with his left foot, and we're all just relieved he's got a goal. So I didn't read too much into any saga with contracts. Is that how you've seen it?
Yeah, I was watching it with my 3-year-old, and I made a jump because I just celebrated it like any other goal, like yes, and punched the air and cheered quite loudly, and then she started cheering when she knew what was going on. But I didn't get same with everybody else. Didn't care who scored the goal as long as someone did, and thankfully it was him. And I would have celebrated it in any other way. I'm certainly not going to be one of those that wish him ill at the moment, or ever. I think he's a human being at the end of the day, and it's a tough decision. It's Real Madrid. It's the best and biggest team in the world. He's won everything at Liverpool, and this is not me, making excuses for him, because it's absolutely not. I'd love for him to stay, but at this moment in time, the title is more important. So I think he did the right thing by celebrating. Gary Neville was quite interesting in commentary. because it was quite a good goal. It was a decent finish, you know, with his
Yeah, it
left
was.
foot as
It
well.
was cracker.
And he chose to, instead of celebrate, obviously not celebrate, but like, you know, hype the moment. People just went, oh, he's taking his shirt off. And I just thought it was a really weird thing to say. And I read into that a little bit more because I was thinking, well, does he know something else? Like, because it was just a very weird comment. So I actually found myself thinking, why he said that and why is he commenting on that rather than the actual goal and what it meant. So, yeah, it was a fantastic picture as well. If it was, I wasn't sure it was Mac or Verge that hung it on the corner flag. But yeah, it was a cracking picture, and I think he celebrated. You know, let's not take anything away from him, like the Liverpool fan that he is as well. You know, that's what I took from that. And as Kev said as well, I didn't read into his comments because I thought it's very PR trained. I thought it's very good media training. He didn't say anything that could be misinterpreted, and he didn't give the journalist like literally nothing at all. He just nope, not going to speak about it yet, and then and that was it really. I'm glad to see him back. It's unfortunate with his injury, but yeah, I think, you know, if we were in a real big title race, we'd be having a different conversation because I'm sure we'll all be excited that he's back. The fact that we've won it at a canter and he's not really going to have that much of an impact with us now being back once the league's all wrapped up, I think that's like where Kev said as well. I think that's where he might have to answer a couple of questions. But I think the longer it goes on now, the less likely he is to sign, because I think he won't announce anything until after the parade, if I'm completely honest anyway. I think if we get to that parade, nothing's going to ruin that parade for him or for the rest of the Liverpool team, you know, by some fans maybe booing him or showing their, you know, discomfort with him going. I think if we get to the parade and nothing's been announced, that's where I think you'll have an announcement shortly after that he will be leaving. But hopefully he stays, because we were struggling to think about right backs who can do what he does in the world, and there isn't any. I genuinely think, I think we said about Frimpong and Hakimi, but apart from that, you know, Trent is unique in the fact that he really is the only one that, you know, suits our team down to the ground as well. So fingers crossed that he stays, but we'll be having a different conversation if he goes.
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't overanalyze it myself. It was just a goal, win, and then you're one win away from the title. That's the way I looked at it. I'm not going to say I don't care, because I do, but at that moment I didn't care. It was just like, celebrate the goal, get the game won, and then think about it afterwards. I'm not one of these that's going to overanalyze it for the next 2 weeks or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. When something's said, that's when we'll know what's happening, and that's the way I look at it. So, talking of contracts that haven't been signed, I'm going to switch it the other way. Talking about a contract that has been signed is obviously the captain, Virgil van Dijk. Now, quickly, obviously this was last week. I just wanted to pick your brains on it, guys. Neil, I'll come to you first. You know, securing Mo Salah, we've already spoke on the previous episode, but securing Virgil as well. It's finally come to an end, that protracted saga with the two. If it ever was, we don't know that. You know, I said last week, I joked that Richard Hughes had finally got rid of his pipe and slippers and started doing some work and got it sorted. Whether that was ever true, it could have been sorted in December and never come out, for all I know. I have no idea. But it's finally nice to see pen onto paper. New, I think it's a 2-year deal, isn't it? Same as Mo. So it's nice to get it sorted.
It is. I think it sends a massive statement with him and Mo signing that we mean business, and Liverpool is still a club to want to join. But more importantly, I don't think there's anyone out there that can do the job as well as he can. And I think at times this season he's almost looked back to his very best level. Might be slightly slower. It's not that noticeable, but I just think there isn't anyone out there who's anywhere near as good as he is, that offers the leadership qualities that he does. I don't think he's been at his best for the last few weeks, if I'm honest. Again, since the return from the international break, he's been casual a few too many times for my liking. But you know what you get with him, and he's a fantastic player, and I think he can play on for a few years yet. because
Yeah,
it's so
yeah.
much of it is in his head. He sees everything early. And I just think it's a huge statement that we finally got it done. Why it took so long, as you say, who knows? But it's a massive relief to get him and Mo over the line. And I was listening to something on the radio earlier. They were saying that if you could pick 2 out of the 3, they would probably be
Yeah.
the 2 that you pick.
Yeah.
So if it goes the wrong way with Trent, at least we've got probably what have been our 2 best players this season signed for another 2 years.
Yeah. Richie, when he signed, it was a bit protracted. They'd gone, to Southampton and said, we want this guy, and it just didn't happen. They waited. They didn't go out and splash cash on somebody else and just think, okay, we'll move on, which happens quite a lot in football, obviously. But they waited, they bided their time, and he came in the following January, and he's been an absolute colossus for this club, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been brilliant. He signed on my birthday, actually, which was a nice birthday present. One of the best I've ever had, actually. So, it was, it was him, and for me, it was Alisson and Van Dijk. They were the 2 missing pieces of the puzzle for us. Obviously, Mohamed Salah is the third one, really, in terms of influence and impact of what they've had. But I've never personally seen a better centre half, especially for Liverpool, than Virgil van Dijk. And to replace him, if he was to go on a free, again, you would really struggle to find that elite centre back in the world right now. And it's an absolute. He's the skipper. He's tried, tested, he's proven, and he plays at such an elite mentality level as well as such an elite physical level. I think it was, why, like you said, why it took so long, we'll never know. But for us, for Liverpool, and I think for whoever it is, whether it's a Huijsen coming in, whoever it is that's going to come in this summer at that centre-back position, he's probably just as important for them as he is or has ever been, because he knows he's got 2 years. Very unlikely that he's going to go past those 2 years at Liverpool, and certainly not as a first teamer. I think he's the type of player to bleed in that next centre back. Ibu doesn't necessarily need it, but whoever it is, if it is a Huijsen, even Kirkez, as a left back, I do think that he's got a really important season next season. He's still going to be a first teamer, but whoever it is that's almost the understudy and is coming through him, he's going to want them to be at the absolute peak of their powers for the next 10 years, like he was at Liverpool since he signed for us as well. So he's a massive player on and off the pitch, and it's one of those that we absolutely had to do, and I'm really glad that we got him over the line. And as Neil said, he's not been at it. He's not been at his best over the past couple of weeks. And I do think it's because we've just absolutely bossed the league, and we're playing in 4th gear when we were playing in 6th, and I think with that casualness of his game anyway, mistakes do happen. And also he's the minutes he's played is unreal, as well. He's hardly been out of the squad. I think he's played every single Premier League game, and it's one of those that maybe actually fatigue is a little bit as well, getting to him over the past couple of weeks, like we've seen with everybody else. So yeah, he's a fantastic scouser, is what he said, and he fully deserves that moniker and title as well.
Kev, no jealousy in this statement. So as a season ticket holder, you get to see him every other week at Anfield. So for you, are you glad that he's staying?
I'm blessed every time I see him on the pitch, not only in his positional sense, but as also his leadership as well. The fact that he leads how he plays. He's guided Timicus through certain games this season, especially the last game at home, in which he's praised him for when he's done the right thing. He's ridiculed players when it's needed to be done. Most of the time, that's been Trent this season. He's held his hands up when he's got things wrong and took upon himself to win the game for us in our last game. He's a colossal. He is our Ron Yates. He is our Alan Hansen. He is a Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, Vidic, any of them all rolled into one. He's a Rolls Royce, and to have witnessed him play on that pitch week in, week out is unbelievable. He's quality. He for me is the reason why this team has done so well, along with Alisson. I think Alisson was the main one. Virgil second to none, and he's took this team further. And quite what Ritchie said, what you get with him is that this now bleeds in for the rest of for any youngsters that are coming in, or any transfers we get in the next 2 years, and it gives us an opportunity to look for that in future Virgil, because at the minute there's no one out there that is even matching what he's doing. Same with Salah. I know you can't see me, but yeah. So that's basically what it is. But for me personally, honestly, I'm blessed every week when I see these players play. Him, Alisson, Mo, Thiago. I know he was injured. He had his injuries, but it's like watching a conductor, the way he played. That's the best analogy I can give him.
I can understand that.
It's a privilege, and as I say, I'm very fortunate to see these players. But Virgil was a great. I'll be honest, I haven't seen anyone in my lifetime who's got the positional sense as what he has, and he could go on for another 3-4 years at the top, I think, personally.
Yeah, so do I, to be honest. And I'm so glad that, like we said, at least 2 out of the 3. We'll see what happens with the third one, but yeah, fantastic contract news for both of them, to be honest. I just quickly, lads, wanted to talk about a couple of other things. Last week I mentioned with Matty on the show that we were getting, I think it's approximately £95 million from UEFA just for this Champions League alone for this season. Hell of a lot of money now in this, because they've revamped it, etc. And he touched on the thing that we've got the new deal with Adidas as well, which we've had a couple of times before. That's worth up to 60 million a season. So I just want to ask you, lads, Ritchie, what do you think of this? Is it nice to have the 3 stripes back? Were you bothered about which kit manufacturer it was? And I mean, but it is a lot of money to take in, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? I've loved most Liverpool kits, to be fair. And when Nike came in, I was really excited to see the special edition kits like you see for PSG, and they have been a little bit underwhelming. If I'm honest, I felt like a lot of them were a little bit templatey, and some of them I didn't particularly like too much. But seeing the 3 stripes, I love 3 stripes on sleeves. I love 3 stripes on tracker bottoms. So yeah, I'm excited to see the kits that obviously they've been leaked already, haven't they? That third kit, as you've said, the green one, it looks absolutely sensational. And my favorite ever kit was an Adidas kit. It was the candy shirt. To see that style of logo, to see that style of crest, because it's the same crest as well, come back. I really rate all 3 of them. And the home kit as well, which obviously is, I always think of Dirk Kuyt, Fernando Torres, Steven Gerrard, that sort of kit with the collar. I wasn't ever a fan of the first kit because I don't like collars. I've only got a small neck, so if I wear a collar, it looks like I've got no neck at all. So yeah, I was, all 3 of them look really good, and I think Adidas, they will take a lot of pride as well, in representing Liverpool Football Club once again. It's a massive amount of money. We'll probably spend it on agent fees, because that's where we spend most of our money. Spent more on agent fees last summer than we did transfers, and we only made 1 transfer, so I don't know how that one works. But yeah, I'm excited to see the Adidas stash. I do love a bit of merch. I love the training gear and things like that. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time. And listen, Adidas are rubbing their hands. We're going to be Premier League champions. We at Liverpool are probably thinking, maybe we should have actually asked for more. But Adidas going in, rubbing their hands, thinking brilliance. So it's a win-win for all parties. Absolutely.
Yeah, Neil, what's your thoughts on it? A good deal for the club?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I was growing up, around the time that Ritchie mentioned, when the sponsor was Candy, I think late 80s, we started to go with Adidas, and I had all of those kits, and I loved them. So I didn't mind the night kits. Some of them I found, particularly the goalkeeping kits, very similar to what they'd done for other teams. So I think Tottenham and Nike, you could see the goalkeeper design was the same for or similar for both clubs, which I didn't really like. So I didn't mind some of our kits, but I do think that Adidas is certainly a favourite of mine. And even just looking at the clubs that are Adidas now, some of the training kit they've got, I think Aston Villa and Newcastle got some fantastic white tops that they wear on match days. So yeah, as I say, I think because I grew up through the Adidas phase that Liverpool had, I'm really looking forward to it. And then from a money perspective, it sounds like we've got a fantastic deal. And I think with the constraints that PSR bring about at the moment, you have to maximize revenues as much as possible. So these kind of sponsorship deals and commercial deals that we do are vital. So yeah, I think all round, I think we'll see better kits in my opinion. And it sounds like financially we're going to do very well out of it. So very good thing, very good news for the club.
Kev, the Ritchie touched on it. The third kit, the green, if it's true that what's been leaked out, it's got the trefoil badge instead of the 3 kind of stripes. It's the old style, which a lot of people like that design. Do you think these kits will sell well? I mean, it's been about 12, 13 years since we've had this company make the kits, you know, so it's like it's a new design again. Come back into it and be like, right, I think it's going to be a big seller, to be honest.
The brand Adidas and Liverpool goes back to the days in the 70s where Liverpool were robbing Adidas trainers abroad in Switzerland and on the continent and coming back. Over in the continent at the time, they had both shoes out, which is why you only see one shoe outside used to see outside shoe stores. It's iconic to the city. If you look at things around the late 70s, early 80s, you see a lot of Liverpool fans who wore Adidas away all through. Any footage you see, you'll always see Adidas, and everyone had Adidas. So the brand and Liverpool go back many a year. Whether that is Liverpool on the continent bringing them home for the young lads who were wearing them in school and around, and that's where you get the casuals from there. So you know, Liverpool was setting the style, the trends, which you now see moved on to the likes of Stone Island. So it's an iconic brand coming back to an iconic club, and it's made it's like Klopp with Liverpool. It fits the glove, and these will sell, and especially the retro kits. My only downside to this is what Ritchie kind of touched on, which is templates. If they don't stick to templates, they could make this absolutely amazing. Bring back some of the iconic brand, kits that we've had. The candy ones, which was amazing. The grey one was lovely. Even the home one as well. It was just fantastic kits. The 86 one for me is another one that I remember. That was my first Liverpool kit, was the 86 one. I even had the tracking as well. So I was sitting there in the cup final expecting Kenny Dalglish to come through to say, "Kev, you're on the bench." But I was ready. So it's an iconic brand coming back to an iconic city, and it's only going to sell. And especially, I hope they do a lot of retro stuff, because I'll be a big. It'll bring back memories for me and the older lads as well who go home and away. So it's great to see that we've got the brand back. I just hope that we don't follow too many templates, and they give us our own little identity. Do you know what I mean? And hopefully we can play in that, because we've had some iconic kits down the years that even if they were brought back, would make millions. Do you know what I mean? So it's great for me, and for me there was only one. There was always one brand that made football kits for me, and that was Adidas. So,
well, I mean, all of you, I think, will love the kits when they do come out, and I'm sure they will sell by the bucket load. And as Ritchie said, it's perfect timing for the brand and the club going into this new era as Premier League champions. So I'm sure it's going to be a good partnership and make the club a lot of money in the bigger picture. But yeah, some of them kits, Kev, I've got to be honest, the iconic ones just really stick in your mind still from being a kid. And you think, you know what, if you could wear something like that again, I think they will sell a bucket load. One other thing that I caught my eye this week, which I don't know if it's true, it's just a rumor that came out there, but considering we all love him at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, front runner for Real Madrid job. Now, if Carlo Ancelotti does leave, and there is rumours about that, and there's only a quick roundup on this, guys, but, you know, would it tarnish him being at Liverpool and then you think, oh, I wish he hadn't done that? Or are you kind of like, just good luck to the guys left now, let's move on? Neil, I'll start with you.
I don't think it will happen. Certainly not this year anyway. I think it's probably going to be Xabi Alonso. I don't think it would tarnish him. He did a wonderful job for us over a 9-year period. I was devastated when he said he was leaving, but I was also relieved because I felt for him personally it was the right time for him to go because he looked washed. And if you see him now, he looks much healthier. He doesn't look as tired, and I think the rest has done him good. I thought there may have been a bit of mischief because that story kind of kicked off around the time that Real Madrid were playing Arsenal in the Champions League, and obviously it didn't go the way that they wanted to for Real Madrid. So I didn't know whether they were just creating noise to divert from what had actually happened on the pitch. But I don't think it will happen this year. As I say, the break, he needed a break. If he's decided that he's had that break and he's ready to jump back into the dugout, that's up to him. We've moved on. We've had a fantastic season. Hopefully that will be crowned on Sunday. Jurgen Klopp will remain a terrifically important person in the club's history. But yeah, we've moved on. And yeah, there'll be no hard feelings from me if he decided to take a job outside of the Premier League.
Okay, Ritchie, your thoughts on it?
I don't think he'll go. I think Xabi is the man, as Neil said, to lead Madrid forwards. From one Liverpool legend to another, I do think it goes to Alonso, and he'll be afforded a fair bit. I know Madrid fans are merciless, aren't they? And they'll have their white handkerchiefs out soon enough. But I think Alonso comes with actually less pressure than an established Jurgen Klopp, who would be expected to come in with immediate impact. I don't particularly think that Madrid squad, as silly as it sounds, they're not a squad. They seem like the PSG, not quite to that extent of your Mbappe, your Neymar, your Messis, and that the individual players rather than the sum of all parts. I don't think a Jurgen Klopp comes in and necessarily fits that straight away. We know that he's a project manager as well, so he will want to know. Remember, it's not just, it's Madrid, it's the greatest team on the planet of the earth. I'm going to take the job. Jurgen isn't like that. He will want to know what the project is, what are his expectations, and if that job isn't right for him, as we've seen him do multiple times to other clubs, Arsenal and Manchester United, he'll walk away and say, no, it's not for me. He'll only take the job if it's right for him as well, and that's what I like. He is that calculated, very meticulous, methodical person. For your second part of the question, if he went, literally would not bother me one jot. It really wouldn't. I'd wish him nothing but the best. He transformed our football club to an absolute superpower, to the heights that it was when Kenny, when Paisley, and what Shankly's vision was. That's what he did for us. Yeah. So there's he'll never go to the Premier League again, unless it's to us. So we know that already. So therefore, he can't, for me, tarnish his reputation by going to another team in Europe, and especially not, a Real Madrid as well. He's not under contract with us, Trent. So him going to Madrid, I hold no grudges.
On that note, we have an hour has flown by on episode 3 of the LFC Total Red podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the chat tonight from Kev, Ritchie, and Neil. You can follow us on X, TikTok. You can like and subscribe on YouTube, and you can now listen to the audio versions on Spotify, and Amazon Music. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I really hope you've enjoyed it. And from us lot, thanks very much. And hopefully by episode 4 is on air, we will have won the Premier League title and I'll be celebrating. I'm trying to work out where Kev's going to be in the parade because he said he's carrying the beers. So we're going to find him. Thanks very much, lads.